In this video, we're going to cover the very important topic of navigation in your apps. So my favorite library for navigating in React Native is called React Navigation. They are on version 3 and I'm excited to talk about it. So let's look at the website real quick. For getting started, you should come here when you're actually looking to get the setup for the first time. First we do npm install React Navigation and npm install gesture handler. React Native gesture handler lets you do things like swiping to open up the drawer, swiping to go between tabs, etc. And don't forget to do React Native link to the native system. I've already done these 3 things in here, so I'm not going to bore you with that part. Let's look at what we have though. So in our simulator here, we have a login screen. That's the login.js file here. We're importing styles from our style sheet, which has a way to center. And we have a title style here to actually increase the font size so you can see it in the margin. All of these files are using some of these styles here, one of the 2. So we have screens here for the drawer. We have tabs here for the tabs. These are all just very basic components. All of these can be found in the GitHub on the master branch without the navigation implemented. So we have a detail screen here, which looks very similar to all the other screens, just a view and a text. And we have a feed screen here that has a button that says a feed item. So let's get started with this. So if we go to the documentation, let's go to Hello React Navigation. So there's different types of navigators in this library. There's the most common one is the stack navigator. In Android, you would think of it as the next activity to the stack. And then you can keep building on top of the stack and go backwards. So let's get rid of this. And there's also drawers and tabs and stuff like that. So let's look at this here. So these are the 2 most common ones that you'll use here. The stack navigator and the app container. The app container just contains all of the navigators. So let's actually just copy this line here and put it into, okay, actually in our app file here, this is how we normally start our app. We're just gonna go to the login, but we want to actually have more of the navigation system in place. So we're actually going to remove this entire component here, and we're going to do, we need a high level app container first. So let's do export default. Actually, we want to copy this and paste this first. Export default, create app container. So whenever you use this library, you'll always have this type of container here. So for our app, we're actually going to create 2 different stacks. We're going to have a stack for authentication, like login, sign up, but we're not going to have sign up. We're just going to have login to make it simple. And we're going to have our normal app stack, which is which actually gets called when you log in. So because we have 2 different ones, we need to have a way to switch between the 2. So React Navigation has something called a switch container, or switch navigator, I mean. So we do create switch navigator in here. I'm going to take these down here. I'm going to try to go a bit fast because we have a lot to cover in this video. And we actually want to put that inside of the app container here. So we're going to have a higher, so create app container is like a higher order component for the switch navigator. Okay, so our switch navigator needs to contain our two stacks. So we have a, we'll define these later, but we need a auth, let's call this auth stack, and we have our login component here already, so let's do login. So this says that our login component will be named the auth stack. So when we want to actually point to our, like a different route, that's another way of saying the same thing, then we use the word auth stack for that. And then we have, let's call it app stack. We don't have anything for that yet. But let's call it, let's just call it app for now. So we need to actually create our separate navigators now. Actually, let's rename this. App will point to the app stack. So we're actually going to define, this is what you define in this file here. So, and then we're going to do, actually let's do that 1 second. Auth will be auth stack. So we will get into, oops, let's do that. So we need to actually define this now. So we do constant app stack, and then these will both be stack navigators because we want to actually create two different stacks. Equals create stack navigator, and then there'll be some components in here, and then we do constant auth stack equals create stack navigator. So this is kind of like the basic structure for what you'll be creating whenever you use React navigation. And for our auth stack, we only have one component that we're going to use. So let's call it login route. I'm going to use the word route a lot. If you come from the web, you'll understand what that is, like how that correlates to the web. And then we'll use the login component there. So this is actually all our auth stack is. So that's easy. So we're switching between our login page and our actual app. So we can treat those as two different stacks. So if we look over here in our files here, we have detail and we have feed. Feed will be our home. That'll be like our main screen. That's what the user will see when they log in. And detail would be like if you click on a feed item, you'll go to like a detail screen. That's kind of how I envision this tutorial. So that's a really common setup for apps. So let's do a feed route. So this will be the actual name that we use when we actually want to call this. And this will be feed. Oh, yes, we import that there. So yeah, I'm using VS Code. So when I actually call a file name, it'll import it for me, which is nice. So let's do detail route and then detail, and then this will get imported also. So we actually don't need our React import here, so we can get rid of that. So we have our separate app stack, auth stack. So now we can see if this will run okay or not. And if this works, then, so we have this error because I'm doing live reloading, so ignore that for now. Let's rerun this. We might have to actually restart the bundler because of how we restructured our app.js file. We'll see. Nope, so that works. Okay, so we have no errors, which is nice. So if we click on our button, that still does not do anything. So let's actually move from our auth stack to our app stack. So if we go back to our feed, we have our button here. So we need to do on press. We need to figure out what to put in our on press. So if we go to the documentation here, let's click on moving between screens. Let's see. So if we look down here, navigating to a new screen, you can read through all this stuff later. I'm just kind of going through the most common setup. So on press, so props, we have a props.navigation. So this is included whenever you include a component in your app.js, like inside of a navigator, it'll have access to this .props.navigation. So actually, let's just copy this here. We'll go back here. Let's put this on a separate line. So this dot, like the navigation dot navigate, this will tell us where to navigate to. So if we go back to our app.js file, we named it detail route. So we want to navigate from our feed route to our, actually let's rename this to feed. Yeah, that's okay. You can name it like whatever you want to. The name is detail route. So if we go back to our feed page and we paste detail route here, we should be able to navigate from one screen to the next screen. So let's save and reload this. So now if we click on login, let's see what happens. Oh, nothing happened. So what did we do wrong? Okay, so my mistake, we're in the wrong component. So we should be in the login, not the feed. That comes later. So if we go back to our login, let's go to the button here. My mistake. So let's, yeah, login, of course. So now we have an on press for this. So now if we press this, what happens? See, so now we're into a different screen. If we look at our detail, we can see that that text is on the screen here. And we also have our back button here, which comes built into Stack Navigator. So we press back, we go there. Okay, so I went ahead of myself and I put the wrong one in there. So I wanted to navigate to the, trial and error, you'll figure this out pretty fast. So we want to go to the feed route first, sorry. So let's go back to our login and we want to go to the feed route first. So let's go back here, feed with navigation. And then we click on our feed item and that takes us to our detail screen. So let's copy and paste this into our feed and we want to have, we have our button here for that. So now we want to go detail route for that. So now we have a stack of 3 different items. Well, actually, we have 2 separate stacks. One has 2, one has 1. So we're going from our feed stack to our app stack, and then we're going from the feed screen to the detail screen. And then we can go back here. And notice that the feed screen does not have a back button. That's because we are actually at the top of that app stack. So there's nowhere to go back to. Like on Android, if you press back here, you'll just exit the app. And we'll never go back to the login screen from this stack. So that's the good thing about having, let's go back to the app.js. So that's the good thing about having this switch navigator here is that once you're signed into the app, you cannot go back to the login screen once you go to the app stack by default. Of course, you want the user to be able to like log out, but that's something that you can actually implement yourself. So now every time, so for example, if you have the user logged in already when they open the app. You just want to go directly to the app stack, which this is the first step to actually allow you to do that. So this is a basic stack navigator here. So let's move on to the next type of navigator, which is our drawer navigator. Okay, so for our drawer navigator, the first step is to actually import the, it's create drawer navigator. If we go back to the website, if you want to look more into this, you would go to the drawer navigator guide here. Let's see, create drawer. So in here, so they define the drawer item and they also define the actual component that it's related to. So let's go, I'm actually going to copy and paste the first one just to save a little bit of typing. Actually, let's just copy and paste this just to save some typing. So let's call this drawer, I don't know what to call this. Let's call this drawer drawer items. I think it's called something different in the finished one, but I'm just kind of thinking what makes more sense now. So let's get rid of these. So we're going to just make up some names here. We're going to keep this as home. And the first screen, so this is another way to actually define the item. So like this is the same thing as this, but this lets you put in more information, which we'll need later on in this video. So home, the screen, like a screen is a predefined name. So home, and then we'll have one called contacts. The screen will be, actually, this won't be feed. We need to actually, we're going to use our drawer screens over here that we defined. So let's call this one screen 1. And this one will be screen 2. And let's define this one as, for example, if we're doing like a cooking app or something, we'll have like recipes or something. Screen 3, and then we can have like a settings or something over here, or like whatever you want. Doesn't really matter for this case, but screen. Actually, I think oh yeah, this should be feed. Okay, sorry, I had it right the first time. Wait, hold on. Oh yeah, so we're gonna actually change. So we're actually going to change how our previous stack worked too. So before we had like a feed route here, we're actually going to change this in a second. But let's do screen 1, screen 2, screen 3. So now we're going to have our drawer be part of the main app stack too. So now in our app stack, we're actually going to change this. So for the app stack, we no longer need the feed route because that's included in our drawer items. So how are we going to handle this? We're going to have we're going to change the name of this to something more obvious. Let's do drawer route. And the drawer route would actually, we're actually going to add more information. So we're going to expand that a bit. And we're going to do screen. Let's call this, actually, we need to create something else first. So we want to actually have a drawer stack navigator, which is something, that's not what it's called, but we're going to have a stack navigator for our drawer itself. So we can actually define some other navigation options. So let's do constant drawer, let's call it drawer stack navigator. And this will equal create stack navigator. Let's see. And then in here we'll define something called drawer navigator. Let's just do drawer route to be consistent. And then here we'll have a screen. So this screen will actually point to our drawer items. Let's actually move this down here. Make sure that if you're going to use something in a navigator, that is defined before you try to use it above. I had an issue where I tried to use something before it was defined in this file, so it's a common mistake. So yeah, so that's actually what I actually need to move this further down below our drawer items. So this will actually point to our drawer items here. So I hope this makes sense. So we have a stack navigator that only contains our drawer items. It might be confusing why we're doing this, but it should make sense pretty soon. Okay, so what do we do with our drawer stack navigator that actually contains our drawer items? We actually want to put this inside of our app stack now. So now our app stack has a drawer route that points to our drawer stack navigator that contains our drawer items. So that might sound confusing, but you'll get used to it as you start to use the drawer more and more. And we're using this syntax a lot with the screen because later on we'll actually customize some things like the titles and some of the colors. So it might seem confusing, but the only thing that we really changed is that we included a drawer stack that contains our drawer items inside of our app stack. So let's see how this runs. So let's do run iOS. So we see that we have no errors, which is always nice. And one thing I forgot to mention is that you see that we have a header on our login screen, which we usually don't want to have, and we'll fix that in a bit. Let's go to our login screen. Feed item. So you don't see a drawer here, right? But let's swipe from the left here. Oh, still don't see it. So let's figure out why we don't see our drawer. We're missing something. Let's find out what we're missing. So I made the mistake that I mentioned earlier. I tried to use drawer stack navigator before it was defined. So let's cut that and put that after. So that's the last thing before the app container. Now let's save. And now we have no errors. So let's go back in and log in. Now our login does not work. Now, can we figure out why that does not work? Yes, because we don't have a feed route now. We are actually going to just use app. So let's go back to our login and just do app. Now we load this again. We log in. We see something weird here, but we'll come back to that. And now if we pull in from the left, we see our drawer here with home, contacts, recipes, and settings. And we can close it like this. So if we click on these now, we see that we have screen 1, screen 2, screen 3. And if we go back to home, we have our feed here. Now let's figure out what this stuff is at the top here. We have this extra layer here. A lot of that is because we have headers. So we have a navigator within a navigator, and all the navigators have their own like header. So you actually have to tell React Navigation when not to show the header. So if we go back to our app.js, we have a header for our drawer, and we have headers for our app itself. So we need to get rid of one of those. So how do we do that? Let's go to the documentation, and I don't know if it would be in this page, probably not. Actually, let's go to the configuring the header bar. So we have navigation options. This is what we would use if we want to put it into our component itself, but we actually don't want to do that for this case. Let's see. So actually, there's a few different options that we have for the header. They kind of walk you through like header style, header tint color. We'll kind of go through these a little bit soon, but actually it's not in this particular doc here. But if you want to hide the header, then you have a header parameter and you just set it to null. I'll kind of show you what I mean here. So for example, in our login route, we don't want to show the header, and you would put it after the actual components that you wanted to show. So it'll be a separate object actually too. So if we do navigation options in our navigators itself, then we use default navigation options. This is something that you'll just have to get used to if you want to set different parameters. So we have header here, which is part of the screen options, and we set that to null. So if we go back to our simulator here, let's save this, and if we go back to our login, we see that that little space at the top is no longer there. So we need to do something similar with this here, with our drawer and app stack here. So let's see how we would do that. So if we look into our app stack here, we have our drawer route here. So let's try copying and pasting this into, so it has to actually go inside of the route itself, like the route object. Make sure you don't put it like down here. You can see here like that's not even recognized in VS Code. So it has to be in this manner here. So make sure you put it in the route itself, the route object, to tell that you don't want a header when this is showing. So let's go to login. Oh, still there. That's not the correct spot. And this is something that you'll kind of get used to. Okay, so this is a good time to explain something. So if you're actually setting navigation options for an entire stack, then you define default navigation options like so as a separate object instead of the navigator. If you actually want to define options for a particular route or for a separate screen, then you would actually use navigation options. So we can copy and paste this here. So navigation options is what you'll use for if you actually want to say that this route should have no header. You would use navigation options versus default navigation options in the entire navigator. So let's go to login, and as you can see here, that extra header does not show up here. So we can look at our drawer. Looks a lot better now. Okay, so there's different options that we can see in the, let's look at this. There's header style, header tint color, header title style. There's title too, that's somewhere in here. Yeah, so you can set the title from the component itself, which I don't actually like to do that. I kind of like to have most of the configuration done in the app.js file if possible. That's just my preference. Okay, so now we want to set up our configuration for this navigator. So we're going to do default navigation options. And now we want to, okay, so first thing we want to set the background to a certain color. So if we look into, let's do header style, that's kind of how we do this here. So we can set the background color on the header style here. So let's do header style, and then we need to send an object, or we need to set an object for that. So background color would be, let's do green. So now if we save this, go back here, we can see that now we have our green header here. Now, let's say that we want to put a title here. One of the ways to set a title would be in the component itself, but you have access to the navigation object. So there's a title parameter, and you can do navigation.state. So if you look at the object in the debugger, there's a state, and then you actually have access to the routes, which is an array, and the routes are the names of these here, like home, context, recipes, settings. It's really the drawer items, so it's giving you the route names of these here. So I actually have access to the index of the current item that's being pressed, and this can be found with navigation.state.index. There's something called a route name, which is the name of these here. So we press save, and then we go back inside. So we see that we have home, context, recipes, and settings. This is a nice little trick here to define the names here in your header without having to do that in every component. Let's make this white. Remember, there's a, if you go back here, there's a tint color. So we have header tint color. So let's put that in here. Let's just call that white. If we press save, go back in, ta-da! Now our header is white. So yeah, that's this is the very basics of setting up a drawer here. There's a lot of other options that you can do. I encourage you to go through this documentation, go through the different options that you can do. You can do like text styling, and you can put images into the header, which will actually do, actually let's do that now. Let's put something into the header now. Because normally if you have a drawer, you would want a way to open the drawer. So let's add a hamburger menu. I've already added the hamburger menu in our assets here, like the actual image here. It's kind of small, but trust me, it's there. So let's find out how we go about doing that. So we have a menu.png file in our project here. So in order to add that to our project, we actually need to import the image in from React Native. So we do import image from React Native. Let's see, and we also need something called a touchable opacity. So this actually allows us to have some feedback when we touch the image. It'll fade in and fade out to let the user know that they actually touched it. It's always good to have like something visual to let the user know that they did something on the screen. So how do we do this? Let's go to our drawer stack navigator here. And we can add a fourth parameter here called header left. There's also header right too, so you can actually add whatever components you want to the actual header. We're going to do header left, and so we need to add a component here. So what are we going to add? We're going to add a touchable opacity, and we're going to add a image within our touchable opacity. Actually, let's just close this here like this. So every image component takes a source, and if you want to look at a touchable opacity more, you should check out the docs for that and the React Native documentation here. So as you can see here, it's pretty much the same thing. So the on-press actually goes in the touchable opacity, not the image. So that's something to keep in mind because people tend to forget that. On-press goes in the touchable opacity. So let's just copy and paste this for now. Put this in here. So what should the on-press be? The on-press should open the drawer and close the drawer. We're going to use toggle just because it makes more sense in this case. So we actually need to assign a function. So we're going to do an arrow function so it doesn't get called until we actually press the button for the first time. So we have navigation dot, there's a function called toggle drawer. And that's pretty much it for toggling the drawer. Let's see. If we look in the drawer navigation here, and we go to the bottom, we can see that there's navigation, open drawer, close drawer, and toggle drawer. So that's what we did here. So what should the source of the image be? We should be pointing to our actual menu. So let's actually import that. So import menu icon from, let's do assets and image and menu. So that's how I like to do it. You don't have to do it this way. You can actually require it in the source line directly, but I like to have everything imported at the top if I can. So we're going to do menu icon here. So let's kind of look at how this would be shown on the screen now. Let's do save. So login. Oh yeah, so we're using a React component here, or two of them actually. So we need to actually import React from React. So let's try that again. So our drawer gets toggled in and out when we press the menu icon here. There's a little bit of a delay when you press it. If you press it fast, it won't open and close. That's just how this works. I don't really know a way around that right now, but you have to wait maybe a second or two, like before each press, if you want to open and close it. Let's add some styling to that so it doesn't look flush with the side of the screen here. So let's do style equals margin left, and let's give that margin a like 8. And we also want to tint it, so there's a tint color parameter in the style, and let's use white for that. So now if we go back in, we can see that we have our hamburger icon that opens and closes the drawer here. So that's all that we're going to do with the drawer for now. So there's one more type of navigation that I want to cover. I want to cover tab navigation. So let's look at how we would do that. So the first step to adding tabs to our app would be to import something called the tab navigator. So we're going to do create. Let's do bottom tab navigator. I'm actually going to import another one. We're going to use it in a little bit, but not right now. So we have a bottom tab navigator and we have a material top tab navigator. Let's go to the documentation here. So we have create bottom tab navigator. There's a lot of different options in here for you to look at. We're not going to go through all these, but we're going to first set up our tabs. So I'm going to add them. Let's see, we'll add them here. So let's do constant tab. Let's do tab items equals create bottom tab navigator. So this will be very similar to how we did the drawers. Let's just call these first tab. And so this one is the first tab, and then we have screen to define our component, and then we'll import tab 1. Oh, tab 1. Let's see. I'm getting an error here. Let's find out why that is. Oh yeah, we forgot our semicolon here. Actually, let's copy paste these. Do second tab, tab 2, third tab, tab 3. So we want to add some options to these tabs too. For this tutorial, we're just going to add a title to these. So let's just, we're going to do navigation options here because we're adding them to the actual component directly. So we're going to add a title, and we're going to call it tab 1 just because. You can name it whatever you want to, but these will be very generic names for this tutorial. So that defines our tabs here. That's pretty much all you have to do for your tab setup. And then we want to set up the header the same way that we did for the drawer. We're actually going to do that inside of this navigator itself. So let's do, let's see, instead of here, let's do navigation options. And we're going to do, we have access to the navigator again. And let's do this. You'll get more comfortable with this as time goes on. I think I'm putting this, oh yeah, I need to add the brackets here. Navigation options, we'll do header style. Let's just copy, actually, let's just copy this stuff from here. Put it into here. The title would actually be the same because you typically don't want to change the header title for each tab. So we'll just do, let's just call it menus. So for the entire tab screen, the header will say menus. So now we have to actually create a way to access these tabs. So how do we do that? So we are going to add another component onto our stack where we show the details at, onto our app stack. So let's do, let's name this tab route, and we'll do tab items here. So if we look into our app now, this is our detail screen. So we need a way to go from our detail screen to our tab route. So I'm going to create another button here in the detail screen. Let's just copy and paste this. And we'll call the title Go to Tabs, and import button into React Native. We need to go to our tab route when we press this button. So this will take us from our detail screen to our tab route. So let's see if this works. Log in, feed item, and then we have our Go to Tabs button here. So let's press this, and ta-da! Easy, easy. So now we have our tabs here. Tab 1, Tab 2, Tab 3. And we can go back to our detail screen, and we can go back to our home screen. Yeah, and that's tabs. Like, tabs are actually a lot simpler than the drawers. So these are the 3 different navigation options that are the most common in React navigation, and probably the ones that you'll use the most. So let's make this look a little bit better. For our detail screen here, we don't have a header. Let's create a header here just to make this look more like an actual app. So how do we do that? So the best way, as we've learned, is to use the navigation options in the component itself. So, well, in the component setup, I mean. So let's do screen, detail, and then we want navigation options. Let's just copy what we did for our tabs here. Let's do this, and add that here. We'll call the title detail. Header tint color, we want white. Background green. We actually don't, if we don't need the navigation object, we can just get rid of this. It's not really that important, but so now we save, go back to our app, and now in our detail screen we have a detail header here, and that's it. So yeah, this file is getting pretty big. You can actually put the navigators into different files, which I recommend, especially as your app grows. You can just import the navigators into this one app.js file to make this a little bit more clean. I encourage you to go to the documentation here, go through the different navigators. There's a lot more here. There's animated switch navigator. Actually, let's show you how to change the tabs here, the tab style. So now we have bottom tab navigator. We imported this material top tab navigator. If you want to change the look of it, all you have to do is change the bottom tab to material top here and save. And now if we go to our tabs here, we can see that, oh, we have a completely different style. And these can also be customized. We won't go into that now, but just go through the tab docs and it'll walk you through that process. I hope this helps you get started with navigating in React apps, in React native apps. And navigation is pretty simple. Once you get going with it, you just have to get used to setting up the navigators here. So I hope you enjoy, and we will get going on more React Native in the next video. Thank you. Bye.